record, yes. Now it's time to record. So welcome everybody. Here's our agenda for today. As many of you have been coming to these meetings, we sometimes flip the switch for you. So today it's actually the first hour will be on learning, and you're going to be learning about some examples of environmental literacy integration. We'll do some breakouts with that. So there's going to be some choice with that. And then some things about, how to get to that environmental literacy integration, and then some networking. And there will be some information items later on in that part. And then that second hour is networking today. So what we do with networking, for those of you who are new, we give you an opportunity to pick a topic or topic areas that you're interested in just talking to other people about. So it's an overview of today, kind of using our collective knowledge and brilliance to connect and be together. So next slide, please. So we wanted to, when we were planning today's meeting, we were feeling some climate anxiety, as many of you across the state have probably been feeling with these recent storms. Hopefully you're all safe and dry and didn't get too much damage from winds or floods or mudslides. But we also want to make sure that we're acknowledging that and thinking through what are some things we can do with that climate anxiety. And one of the things we've been talking about is books and reading. And I know Julie's going to talk about this a little bit more in her section, but a few things that you could do is do some reading. So a couple of suggestions for some nonfiction books are these that are pictured here. One Green Thing is really great to just kind of read through and think about what are some things you can do to take actions. We know that that's one way to deal with climate anxiety. And the one on the right is called All the Feelings Under the Sun. We may have mentioned this book before, but it is definitely great for students, and especially upper elementary to middle school and high school kids, but it's good for adults too. And it's really a great book about kind of journaling and thinking through and how to deal with climate anxiety and climate change. But we also talked about climate fiction. So cli-fi is the latest trend, I guess, in reading. So we were wondering if any of you had any climate fiction books you're reading right now, and we'll want to share them in the chat. Maybe we'll start a book club. So a few of us have been talking about Ministry of the Future, which is heavy if you haven't started reading it or listening to it yet. And then another one that we also are reading in our Silicon Valley Reads is called The Light Pirate. So that's again, there's some things happening there with the climate space, and so yeah, put your favorite cli-fi in the chat. And if you don't have one, we'll make some suggestions for you. All right, next slide, please. So our objectives, as always, we want to make sure we get through these so you understand. Some of you, again, are new to this, and welcome to you all. So we're sharing resources and innovative practices in this community practice, and we intend to build the capacity of county offices of education to serve as regional backbone support for the following outcomes in each county. We support access to regular and ongoing environmental and outdoor learning experiences for students by working with districts, teachers, community-based partners, and it centers on supporting those from the most vulnerable and marginalized communities. We support the development of district-wide plans that include experiences for students at all grade levels, with an emphasis on the low-income students and students of color. We're applying frameworks that integrate environmental literacy and sustainability into the curriculum, campus, community, and culture. And we are infusing sustainability principles and practices into county offices of education corporate operations. So if you're not a county office of education person, that's fine, but make sure you're connected to them in some way. But most of you are all county office of education folks. So coming from this book that I shared a minute ago, All the Feelings Under the Sun, again, we've been dealing with lots of climate disasters and catastrophes lately, last year, this year, every year, unfortunately. But as I mentioned, we need to also make sure that we're taking time for ourselves and having so one of the things in here is about gratitude. We've done this, I think, before, but there's a saying from a long time ago that says, in every moment, there are 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. So we're not meant to literally write all those down, right? The joys and sorrows, but it means that wherever we put our attention, our feelings follow. So since we've been all dealing with the weather and the atmospheric river and all that lately. I want us to also shift that, think that hard feelings that you might be having about that, and think about things that you're grateful for. So if you have a pen and piece of paper, it's really good to write these things down. If you don't already do this, maybe some of you already do a gratitude journal, or we used to, during the pandemic, we would do Post-it notes every day and put them in a jar. So write 5 things or more if you want that you're grateful for. And even if it's just looking around where you are, and think about 5 things. This one says 10, but but what are things that are you're grateful for, and or what's going well, and take a moment to write those down. And then if you'd like to share in the chat, one of those. And someone just asked about the author for All the Feelings Under the Sun, and her name is Leslie Davenport. And I believe she is a Bay Area and Pacific Northwest author. So yeah, take a moment to share maybe something you're grateful for. Ooh, nice. Joshua tree seedling. I love that connection. Fur babies, yay. Green trees, yeah. Have to think about the good results from the rain too, right? Working together. Oh, nice. The Tet Festival activities, Year of the Dragon, yeah. Plants blooming. Some great things here. All right. So yeah, again, highly recommend this book if you haven't got your hands on it yet. And then more book recommendations. Oh, no way, Undamming the Klamath. That's great. Okay, and I think next slide, and I'm going to pass it to Katie, I believe, for the next part.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, we are super fortunate to have a lot of our County Office of Education friends and coworkers be able to share with us today examples of environmental literacy in their content areas. So we have 4 amazing speakers. We have Marika Manos from the Orange County Department of Ed for History and Civics, Anthony Kwan from the LA County Office around computational thinking, and I'm super stoked he got his tech issues fixed and is with us now. Julie Hilborn from the San Mateo County Office of Ed for ELA, and then Nate Fairchild from Shasta County Office of Education for elementary. So you don't want to hear me yammer on, you want to hear them and all of the great work that they're doing. So they're each going to talk for about 5 minutes, and then after they share, we're going to be going into some breakout rooms, and you can actually self-select who you want to learn more about. So our first speaker is going to be Marika for our history and civics. And Marika, would you, do you want to share screen, or do you want us to drive?
I can share if that's easier.
Okay, cool beans.
And then you don't have to hear me say next slide, next slide. Okay. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all today. I don't know if it's raining where you are, but it's not raining today, so that's exciting. So I am the History Social Science Manager here at the Orange County Department of Education. And it's hard for me to think about contexts where the environment doesn't play a role in history social science. I'm actually leading work around 3 model curriculum projects, one on the Cambodian American experience, one on the Vietnamese American experience, and one on the Hmong history and cultural studies model curriculum. And every lesson has some sort of connection to the environment because we're so connected to the ways in which our world feeds us, cares for us. So what I wanted to just kind of talk about is a couple of things that I've done with the Education and Environment Initiative specifically, and the environmental principles and concepts. And so really thinking about inquiry across the curriculum. I'll talk a little bit about how, but within the history social science framework, there are long-term and short-term questions that builds cohesiveness around the concepts. And many of those explicitly call out the ways in which humans affect the environment and the ways in which the environment affects our daily life. In addition, in every single one of our courses, K-12, there are these civics and economics applications as early as kinder, and getting kiddos to think about our choices, which is the study of economics, and how those choices can impact the environment is really important. And then the second piece is really about sort of this civic learning application and using these big ideas to dive more deeply into research and thinking around humans and the environment. So regarding those big ideas and concepts, those questions for inquiry, I just pulled a couple of my favorite that are in the history social science framework. I've done lesson studies around this with elementary teachers, and then we've connected it to picture books with high school teachers. We've done collaborative planning. We've thought about specific primary sources and secondary sources that would support these questions to use with a discussion and inquiry with students. So, you know, kinder, what is our neighborhood like? Love it. Second, why do people move? I mean, there's all of those concepts can be built in different ways. 6th and 7th grade, ancient world history and medieval history are amazing. Every single unit has an explicit connection to the ways in which humans have impacted the environment with economic expansion and the expansion of civilization, as well as how our choices have made changes in the environment and how those impacts affect our cultures and affect the ways that we live. And then 10th grade world history, modern world history, this idea of like, what are the legacies of conquest? Like literally changing the borders affects the ways in which rivers run. And all of our technologies affect the ways in which we can gather food, access food. So the environmental principles and concepts and environmental literacy generally is so pivotal to what we do in the history social science world. In Appendix B of the History Social Science Framework, if you haven't spent some time with this, kind of talks about the big ideas in history social science. And each one of these big ideas has a connection to environmental literacy. Even when we think about spiritual life and moral codes, all of our ways of connecting with the spiritual world have some root in the environment. So as I said before, we've done some collaborative planning and lesson study, and then we're really centering those inquiry pieces. The last thing I wanted to talk about, and Katie, stop me if I go too long, is the state seal for civic engagement, which is something that you've heard 11th and 12th grade students in many districts throughout the state can earn. The environmental initiative is a way that kids can really get to that state seal. And I'm going to give you an example in a second. At OCDE and a couple other county offices, I know that LACO as well is piggybacking on an effort that CJEP and San Diego County Office and I worked on as pathway certificates for students who engage in civics can be honored for their work at the primary level, elementary level, and middle school level. So oftentimes we're kind of couching our civic endeavors in environmental literacy, but a lot of my training kind of connects to these sustainable development goals. So even getting students to think about what problem they would like to solve in their community, we can root them in the sustainable development goals. And then getting them to engage in this civic action research project. So I lead a civic institute, and in that institute, teachers engage in supporting students, thinking about ways to support students along this sort of inquiry arc. And students can engage on any topic, but oftentimes they engage in one that has environmental literacy elements. They read, study, discuss, they engage in an action, present, and then reflect. And feel free to use any of these slides in any of your contexts. Our ITO, Inside the Outdoors, also has helped us come to the Civic Learning Institute, and even integrating science and history, social science has been really helpful, specifically in this civics context. One of our elementary schools just, I think 2 weeks ago, 2 Fridays ago, had an environmental science civic showcase. So it was like this amazingness of everything we want in best practice, the research, the literacy, the connection to the content, and then the civic action, that engagement. Students in 4th grade were looking at renewable energy, and they were looking at how could they communicate their passion to adults. One of the students sat at a board meeting for 2 hours to share the importance of renewable energy, 3rd grade student. So exciting. And basically what the principal did is she had each grade level choose a topic. They did the study in environmental science, and then they engaged in an action for civics. So hopefully that gives you some ideas. I want you to really think about how we can celebrate environmental literacy. And I think civics is one of those ways. We're having a civic celebration in April. And we're going to honor the students at Golden View and other places that are doing the work for environmental literacy. Some of them are doing additional topics, but hopefully I was able to pique your interest.
Thank you, Marika. And our next person is Anthony Kwan from Los Angeles County Office of Education. Do you want to share? Oh, you already did. Okay, there we go. Go for it.
Hi, everybody. Just again, Anthony Kwan, LA County Office of Education. I'm the STEM Science Coordinator here. And I want to begin by first thanking all of you, but also want to thank, my partners who actually gave me this idea, which is basically UCLA Science Project in the form of Justin Betzelberger and John Kovach, who is actually doing a lot of work around computer science. And then as they were doing this work, they saw this whole other area that's coming out in terms of computational thinking. And so I just kind of want to just begin with that, and then we'll make our way in terms of how this all connects to the work that we're doing here with Kaylee. There it goes. So the outcome basically was to share an understanding what computational thinking is for equity in science classrooms, but also through a series of learning experiences, and then how to integrate that into the science lesson design. So that's kind of what the original outcome was. And so after seeing this and then thinking about this a little bit more, we thought about, well, if this is supposed to be the goal, which is to prepare all students to be critical consumers of information problem solvers and engage in public discussion using evidence-based arguments across a broad range of topics, this might actually be a great way of talking about this idea of computational thinking in terms of in terms of data science, but through the lens of the environmental education component. So with the science and engineering practices, you can see this is kind of what it's all about, making sure that, again, students know how the science develops, but more importantly, how they can actually just use it to help them understand the world around them. So again, focusing on this idea of using mathematics and computational thinking, we had our leadership group here in LA County. So our science leaders, along with our math leaders, came together to come and talk about what does it mean for computational thinking to take place. So we had them thinking with this particular prompt here, in terms of how is it broken down, what does it actually mean, etc. And so what we found was that under the computer science standards, they do have a clear definition. So this is the clear definition from computer science in terms of computational thinking, which is again what we just saw in that original slide. So this is just a repeat. I apologize for that. So with the computer science, it again has a clear delineation of what it's all about. But when it comes to the math and science, well, it's not as clear. It's not as clear cut. And so what we decided was have them think about this. Here's coming from the actual math framework in terms of the math lens for computational thinking. And then here's what computational thinking is stated under NGSS. So I'll give you a moment to kind of look through that. So just briefly, basically what the math and science does, it provides a picture of what it could look like in the classroom, but doesn't necessarily tell you how to do it or explain exactly what it should be in terms of how to bring it up with students and then how to use it in the classroom. So we kind of go from here, and then we actually go into the real world scenario. So we give them a adult learner lens, so looking at things through that. So we gave them the Port of LA. So we kind of asked them, do you recognize what this is? Where is it? What do you notice? What do you wonder? And then we kind of go into it in terms of here's the Port of LA, and then here's another version of the Port of LA. What do you notice now? What's happening here? How is it different from what you saw earlier? And then what we noticed was that the participating leaders, again, math TOSAs, science TOSAs, they were definitely noticing the effects of, okay, in the original slide, looks like there's a lot of landmass, lots of buildings. It looks like there's some set patterns in terms of how structures and things are used. But then we get to this, which is a whole lot of environmental impact in terms of human impact on the area. Then we also ask them, okay, what about this image here? What are you noticing now? And again, they're noticing some big things. So what is that? What's causing that? What's going on here? And then from here, we go on and talk about the pollution blanket, and then give them some more information about the Port of LA. So again, really diving into the environmental education component to really draw out the story of what's going on in the Port of LA. And again, getting people to think about this idea of computational thinking to figure out what's going on, what is the problem, what are the possible solutions. And then again, continue to give them some more facts and figures. And then again, going into some more deeper components. So giving them some more data to use to figure out what is going on. What are you noticing now? And this conversation is still ongoing right now. The math and science leaders still don't have a common understanding of computational thinking, but they now have a common understanding of how the environmental education components draws out the science and the mathematics. And again, how it impacts students and the world that we live in. And so we kind of give them some driving questions about what to do, what can we do, how can we move forward. And that's kind of where we've left it at this point. But again, just getting the leaders to now think more clearly about what environmental education is and how we can use it in terms of relating it to what we need to bring up in our own classrooms. So I hope that helps out a little bit. And I know that there's going to probably be a lot of questions for me.
Thank you, Anthony. And next up is Julie.
Okay, hi everybody. Let me just put this on slideshow. Okay, I am the Environmental Literacy and Sustainability Coordinator at the San Mateo County Office of Education. And thank you, Marika and Anthony. That was so inspiring for me. And I was actually thinking the whole time, there are many English language arts tie-ins to all of the things that you were talking about in terms of the reading and the writing and the thinking critically and the making discoveries. So I love how what all of us are talking about today can really be integrated together. So I'm going to talk about English language arts. I was an English language arts teacher for 2 years. Primarily, I taught science and environmental science. But in our program here at the San Mateo County Office of Education, we have my predecessor, Andra, was a English language arts teacher. And through our Environmental Solutionary Teacher Fellowship program, we've been able to integrate a lot of English language arts into the things that we are working with the teachers on. So when I was thinking about talking to you all, just the integration of environmental concepts, kind of like Marika said, is very easy when you are already teaching books. If there are books that are already being taught, so focusing on the environmental themes that are already in those books within the narrative is a great starting point. The environmental themes that Marika was talking about are the environmental principles and concepts. And so I just clicked on that link, and all of these can be applied to many of the books that I'm going to talk about today. The triple bottom line analysis, I will talk about this in our breakout room in a little more detail with older readers, is a way to analyze literature from an environmental standpoint. And then we also have solutionary and environmental book examples that I'm going to share with you. And then, of course, reading and journaling outside is a great way to integrate environmental concepts. So our solutionary environmental book examples for you, there's a link right here to the list that we have, and they're organized by all of these different kinds of books, but also by grade level. And many of the books that some of them anyway, that people put in the chat earlier are also here in this list. And so there is a link to the book as well as a description of the book. So there are some nonfiction, there are general themed books. We have books for youth and secondary, and then we also have an elementary list, and some that are specific to climate change. And so this list actually can be very overwhelming, but it's also super comprehensive, which is really nice. And as you can see, this just kind of goes on and on. We've also developed this by topic. So if you're looking for something that is on a specific environmental topic, waste, energy, food, land, transport, or water, then there are several books that are suggested within each of those topics. And then if you're thinking about systems thinking, there is a list for that as well. So I wanted you to have that as a resource. It is a really, really comprehensive resource. A few favorites of mine, like one of them was already mentioned. So All the Feelings Under the Sun. These two are elementary. And then The Earth Speaks is a book that I've used throughout my entire career because it is a set of poems and readings and writings by Indigenous voices, as well as, some of the more well-known nature writers like Thoreau. And so you can get little snippet, tiny poems, and then it goes up to even longer readings of a couple of pages. I have used this book in so many different places, like on the last day of school, finding the perfect poem to read to the students, or being outside, even if you're surrounded by concrete and you're outside, and just taking a moment of mindfulness and reading outside. It's a great way to use that book. Braiding Sweetgrass was mentioned in the chat as well. There is one that's specifically for young adults, and I think young adults is a loose term. This book could be used with middle school, high school, and so those are just a few favorites. And then nature journaling, John Muir-Laws is sort of the premier expert on nature journaling. And he talks a lot about using nature journaling to do all of the things that we want to do in English language arts. So crystallizing our thoughts and focusing attention making sure that students are thinking critically and incorporating and remembering new information. Nature journaling can connect multiple subject areas, so not just English language arts, and also year long. So I've used nature journaling, over time, like going outside and making observations. In 6th grade science, we had, we're learning about seasons. And so, looking at the angle of the sun at a certain time of year and then going back out again and having the kids really take ownership of their journal. Simple ways of making nature journals: a piece of construction paper, print out some lines, fold it, and have the kids tie it with a yarn. And so kids all the way through at least 6th grade are willing to do that. And so nature journaling is just a great way to integrate. We have a high school ELA curriculum integration. A lot of this came from Bishop O'Dowd High School. So I just wanted to pull out some books that, many high schools are already teaching. So a lot of high school students will be reading Of Mice and Men or The Great Gatsby. And both of those books have environmental themes within them. Earth Abides, and then also just thinking about, if you're doing a short story unit, how can you connect the ideas to the environmental principles and concepts? And then this one is a 12th grade expository and descriptive writing lesson plan that could be adapted for other grade levels. So I wanted to put that in as another tool that can be used. Some things that we've done here in San Mateo County to promote English language arts and reading and writing. So we have a partnership with an organization called Cat Kid Adventure. And this year, after our Environmental Youth Leadership Summit, Cat Kid Adventure came up with this idea of having a short story challenge. And so in the short story challenge, students were encouraged to write their own story that had an environmental or a climate change theme. And our San Mateo County Office of Sustainability provided some prizes. The winners were just announced. There were 12 submissions and 3 winners. And Cat Kid Adventure, they're very much into kind of gamifying learning so that it makes it exciting and fun for students. And so the reason I put this in is just, if you're at a county office, look for partners that you can do things with. Like, I didn't have to do a lot of work for this. Cat Kid Adventure did. I got us the funding from Office of Sustainability, and, we went from there. San Mateo County Reads happens every year. So this is great if you are not already partnering with your county libraries. They are an amazing partner. And so every year they promote San Mateo County Reads. This year, the 2 books had an environmental theme. The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, about a boy from Africa, based on a true story. Actually, it is a true story. It was written by the boy who did harness the wind and built a windmill in his community to help them in Malawi from drought. And then this one, similar, Africa, Issues of Water, The Water Princess. So, encourage you to partner with your county library. Jen is going to jump in. If Jen's still here, there she is. Oh, good. Jen's going to jump in and talk about Silicon Valley Reads, because they also have a partnership with the library.
Sure. So this year's theme for our Silicon Valley Reads, which has started, kicked off last week, is A Greener Tomorrow Starts Today. And we had a panel with some authors from the 3 adult books. I mentioned One Green Thing, The Light Pirate Being the Fiction, and then All We Can Save is a book of essays. So that was really cool. And then there's author talks and presentations throughout the 2 months. So we go through March. We also have an educator toolkit for the youth books. And so that's linked there. That's live linked. Some of you asked for the slides, so those are there. So it's really cool to be partnering with our libraries and presenting this as a theme this year. So it's lots of resources there. And I think I linked even the website. So I agree with Julie, partner with your local county and city libraries to do this work too.
Thank you, Jen. All right, I think this is my last slide. Just yesterday, actually, I got an email from 10 Strands, and they're talking about their National Poetry Month event. So I thought I would promote it for them here. The question is, how has nature been a teacher to you? And they're asking people to write a little poem of just 1 to 2 lines. They're going to compile it into one big poem, is my understanding. Amy might be able to talk about this better than me. All ages are invited, could be adults, could be kids. Teachers could submit on behalf of their classes, and their deadline is February 29th. And that's in honor of National Poetry Month. And I think that that is it for me.
Thank you, Julie. And we have Nate for elementary. Do you want to share your screen, or would you like for us to drive?
I will share.
Okay.
Okay, excited to talk with you about elementary school. My name is Nate Fairchild. I work for the Shasta County Office of Education. Pronouns are he, him. And elementary is a different world, you know, and so much has been shared already. I feel like I'm going to echo a few things, so I won't belabor that point. But elementary is interesting, especially in my area, but maybe in yours too, where teachers love nature and environmental literacy, but they'll often say they don't have time to do it. And so I'm keeping this on a pretty simple level with this presentation. How do we get in the door with those teachers so they will get started? And really, so once we get in the door, we want to take them back out the doors. How does that work in elementary school to get them rolling in this work? And what I have found in work with elementary school teachers is that once they get started, then they will continue with that work, and then they get more interested. But often it's difficult to get that first part going. But I was asked the other day for a schedule that showed daily science being taught in our region. Went out to 9 counties. And nobody offhand had a schedule that could show science being taught every day in elementary school, much less environmental literacy. So how do we get past that when we know that they love nature? So some of the ideas have been shared before, but how great would it be then if, because of this work with nature, that it makes students feel safe, comfortable, and positive? And this kind of work allows them to express themselves and problem solve, tear down those mental silos between subjects and maybe other things, and connect ideas and really revel in nature. I put this slide up and teachers are excited. That's what I want to do. Well, I have an answer for you. We can do this. So taking that environmental literacy and ELA back and forth and connecting them is a current focus of mine. And we've done this for a few years in this area. So integrating it with science and ELA, taking a look at science notebooks, primarily for those older kids in elementary. A peer-to-peer discourse is something that they're probably already doing, but let's do that with some natural phenomena. Kids love it. And you know what elementary teachers love is when kids are excited because they love something. So bust out a simple phenomenon, let them have some discourse and questioning about it. Nature journals has been mentioned. Thank you, Julie. And hey, thanks for mentioning that Earth Speaks, because how old is that book? Because I use that book a lot, and I don't want to look at the copyright date on that book with that admission. And finally, of course, we can connect to standards. And that connect to standards part is important because as our teachers want to do these connections to nature, they also want to, or they need to get approval from their principal, who may be saying, this is our schedule and science is on Fridays, and you can do nature as part of some of your Fridays. So let's take a look at integrating environmental literacy. Now, this is a classic old slide, but it's still one that resonates with administrators as well with teachers. So we can take a look at all the ways that the practices integrate, and the practices are great because the practices are things that we do. And science is full of do. I used to have a sign in my classroom. We are doing, not listening. My classroom was never quiet. We were doing. So when we look at these more connected to ELA, here are some of those practices. And I love the ones in bright green on the right. So I'm going to start there. But when we obtain, evaluate, and communicate information, we are doing ELA and we are doing science. When we obtain, synthesize, and report findings clearly and effectively in response to task and purpose, we are doing science and we are doing ELA. So the idea that we push out through something I can't do in 5 minutes is that science and environmental literacy and nature can be time savers because we can get the engagement piece in. And again, teachers love that engagement. So there's more ELA standards, math standards in the middle section as well. But I'm kind of watching my clock here too for you. This book has been really game-changing for us, especially with upper elementary, but you could use these ideas in lower elementary as well. I think Fulton and Campbell's simple little book, it's short, about half of it is real nuts and bolts, which the elementary teachers love. The second half is more the pedagogy piece, which they like. And so we have really emphasized using this book in lots of our work. In this Fulton and Campbell book, they bring out things like students needing agency in their science notebooks, that science notebooks are not grading. They're not summative assessments or a graded product. And that really allows freedom in writing, which means more, and I don't want to say necessarily better writing, but when you get that freedom in writing, you write more instead of freezing up and not knowing what I'm supposed to say. And finally, they are tools. They're nice assessments. They're just formative, not summative assessments. Discourse, again, I mentioned that before, and I won't go into a ton of detail here, but when we're teaching kids discourse, we can naturally do that with phenomena, and we can have them write about it. So peer-to-peer student discourse has become something that teachers are getting much better in compared to, say, 10 years ago. And what better mechanism than using nature and the natural world and environmental literacy to do that? Nature journaling, John Muir Laws was mentioned. We use a lot of John Muir Laws work in our grants and such. And making a sketch and labeling it is a great jump into ELA for those younger students. And if they draw like I do, then they're in desperate need of good writing skills, because you wouldn't know a beak if I drew a beak for you. And finally, the idea of social-emotional learning. We know the evidence is there that simply spending time in nature enhances learning. And we even have studies that show, my favorite study is if kids go outside and do a science lesson and come back inside, finish the science lesson, and then an hour later they do math, guess what? Their math learning goes up from having spent time outside. So when we can show things like that, we're feeding right into what the teachers want. They want a reason to go outside. They want a reason to use nature. And SEL is huge and important, and it's a great way to get them rolling. This is a great resource. I linked it into here so you can get there. And I'm not going to spend time on each slide, but when we go to principals, when we go to superintendents or boards, we can connect SEL to environmental literacy. And this was created by Callie, and it's an amazing resource that goes through all the different ways that this can happen using the CASTLE ideas and just blending them together. So we use this regularly as well. Okay, I made it in 7 minutes. I was shooting for 5.
Thanks, Nate. What we're going to do now is allow you guys to choose a breakout room. Our presenters will be in each one of those. So there will be one for history civics, one for computational thinking, one for English language arts, and one for elementary. There is a note catcher that Crystal put into the chat if you so want to, have things, record things and all of that. And Amy is going to open up the breakout rooms and you guys can pick.
So there's the 4 content areas, everybody, and then there's one room for just integration in general, if you don't want to talk about a specific content area, but just how to do the actual integration piece, best practices around that.
And if you need help getting into a room, please let us know. We're happy to help.
Everyone, we're hope that you had some great conversations in your breakout rooms. It looked like some great stuff showing up on the note catcher. We just want to share with you that there are some other tools and resources that you might use as you think about these. Some of them were shared in the presentations that we heard from our speakers. So we do have that environmental literacy webinar series. Nate had included the specific one about SEL, but there's others that are linked in there. The teacher call to action toolkit is really to support how do we get a roadmap for moving along and for supporting teachers in this work. Our state seal of civic engagement environmental literacy implementation guide goes along with what Marika was sharing with you, thinking about those pathways to civics and really thinking about how do we help students move through their thinking about civic action. And then we also have the call to action for school leaders, which was one of our original documents here with our work, really connecting the work that we need to do in education to the spaces around environmental literacy so that we can see those connections and the applicability of them. We also have a model for professional learning that we discussed during our last professional learning session for the COP, which was a few months ago. And just a reminder that that is this idea that we think about that learning and skill building, but also coaching. How do we support educators through action-based projects, allow them some space for accountability, and then that space to cohort network, like what we're doing here for community of practice, to continue to grow together and help move our work forward. So with that, what we're hoping to get from you is what are those subject areas or topics or tools that you want to discuss during the next hour? So if you went into the history social civics room, but you really want to have an ELA conversation in the next hour, drop that in the chat. If you saw one of these tools and you want to spend some time diving into, say, the State Seal implementation guide with some friends, drop that in the chat. Or if there's another topic altogether, expanded learning, something else that's burning for you, drop those in the chat. We will use those to make the breakout rooms for our next hour for the networking time. So we appreciate that. I'm going to give you a minute. I know a lot of times I ask you to do something and then I just immediately talk. So.
Looks like people just want to wing it, Crystal.
It does. That works for me. Then what we'll do is in the next hour, we'll have just some open rooms, and we've got one, thank you, Maya, around local case studies. So we'll have some open rooms available and you can self-select into them during that optional time. Those of you who might need to hop off, please let us know your guts and needs. We want to hear how this first hour of learning went for you, what you got out of it, what you're hoping to get in our next couple sessions during COP this time. And then remember, our next time is going to be for those optional breakout rooms. And we're going to take a 10-minute break. So we will pick back at 10:10.
But wait, there is
I forgot we have a friends here. Yes, sorry.
Jane Gray, this is you.
Good morning, everybody. Gratitude to you all for allowing us to be with you. Thank you again, Amy. I'm Jane Gray with DUDEC. We're an engineering and environmental firm. I'm a regional planner. I also taught English to folks who had other languages. I taught ESOL for 10 years in different parts of the country and abroad. And I wanted to just preview a little bit of work that DUDEC has done with the California Department of Water Resources. We talked about water this morning, and rain and water is a resource, no matter if it comes from the sky or in your sink or whatever goes down your toilet, all of it is resources. So we prepared with Department of Water Resources K-12 bilingual educational materials that really center students within their watersheds, whether they be urban or rural watersheds. All of these materials are online, accessible. Next slide, please. Formulated for really easy insertion into any classroom. They are, again, centered on watershed learning, as well as opportunities to talk about civics and history, pre-extraction in California, Native peoples, what their lands look like, and then also how that has impacted and affected climate change. So we're happy to chat with you if you have any interest, and appreciate your time and don't want to take up time in your break, but we'll be here for the second hour.
I think the cool thing about these resources is that they're really specific to the different hydrological regions of California. So if you want to find out more about what's really going on with the water in these areas, then Jane will be here later in a breakout room and you can step in and chat with her. they're totally free and they're looking for teachers to pilot, give feedback, and just be thought partners in helping students become more climate literate around water issues.
Thank you, Jane. Thanks, Amy, for that. You know, it's always important for us to think about where are we getting all these exciting supplemental resources to support our teachers as they do this work. They usually can't make it up from scratch. It's too time consuming. So we really appreciate getting to see all of this. All right, so we'd love to see your gots and needs. We saw a couple of them in the chat, and go forth, take a break, and we'll see you back, let's say 10:13.
Okay, hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are going to be a smaller group here for the second hour. Hope you had a lovely break. I actually got up out of my chair, went downstairs, walked around the building, walked in the front door, and came back up here. I feel a lot better. So, looking in the breakout room, not in the breakout room, what is that thing called? The chat. Looking in the chat, we don't necessarily see like a clear breakout room. Although, Katie, maybe you have an idea.
Amy already created some breakout rooms.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
That would help for me to actually look at the breakout rooms. Oh, yay, Amy. Okay, awesome.
So it's all of our subject areas plus what? Where did it go? I meant, hold on, plus room 7 is supposed to be the water. And then there's a room called Just Avoiding My Emails by Networking as well. So if that's what you need to do, then do that. Oh my gosh, where did it go? I am so sorry. Room 7 is with Jane to talk about the water resources. All right. So
given that we only have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people, if you end up in a room by yourself and you want to ponder those topics by yourself, great. But if not, you can just come back to the main room.
I would think if we have more than 2 breakout rooms, it may not be that productive.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, is if maybe we should either remain as one big breakout room or we could split up into a couple of breakout rooms.
What do people think?
What was that, Nathan? Nate?
I'm just asking folks here. I'm looking at these faces. I know some of these faces. What would you like to do? I know in elementary, we barely started a conversation and suddenly it was over. So we might have more to talk about it there, but what do people want to do?
Well, I see Nancy joined room 7 to talk with Jane and Madeline about the water stuff. So that's kind of a
Join
little
room
Okay.
7.
So that's
Bye.
a room
Thank
there.
you all.
That's where I plan on going also.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Should we join now or?
Yeah, go ahead, go for it.
Okay.
Yeah, go and join. If there's a topic you want to talk about, definitely join.
You said 7?
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
7's got the most people in it. It's got 4 now. And local case studies has 1.
Well, I think Maya wanted to talk about that too. So, yeah.
And I am, like some of you, perhaps desperately writing a grant that's due Tuesday.
Go do
So
it.
I'm not seeing a great need for all of us here. So I am going to go back to my other work then and try and reduce my stress level.
Thank you, Nate.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, thanks. Great job, everyone.
You too.
Loved feeling that energy.
Wonderful.
Amy.